Every company is different, has different influences. If our investors saw that like we are just this, they'd be like, why did we invest in this? And it's so interesting because investors also care about growth and results. And so there's an interesting balance between branding and messaging and like practical SEO results.
This is Creative Operations, a podcast for B2B marketers who want to redesign how their own teams get creative work done. In each episode, Jacob Brain discusses the strategies, processes, and tools required to create amazing work that also has a business impact. Using a blend of personal stories and interviews with guests, Jacob uncovers how you can get the most out of your creative operations. Let's get started.
Hey there, my name is Jacob Brain, Agency Director and host of Creative Operations. Today, I am joined by Hal Zeitlin, the owner of Candid Leap. They're an enterprise Webflow partner, and they focus on the B2B SaaS space to help create unique experiences from a web standpoint for these organizations. So we actually had met through Growth Mentor, which is it's like a startup mentorship program we're both involved in, had a great conversation. And I'm really excited to have him join us today and hear a lot kind of more from him about some of these subjects we'll talk through. So without further ado, Hal, welcome to Creative Operations.
Good to be here.
Awesome. So I want to start at the beginning here. You have a really interesting entrepreneurial journey that we've actually only talked about parts of it. So for those listening, and partially for myself, catch us up by walking through maybe how you got where you are today. And I'd love to hear what that has to do with bagels.
So before I even got into the Webflow space, I was doing marketing for different companies, got a lead marketing for a few companies. And I just discovered this platform called Webflow. And I just realized that with changing technologies, me as someone who's never studied coding, not a great designer, I could build some phenomenal products that, for all the marketing work we do in the industry, everything really points back to the website. And so, for years, I just led marketing campaigns and teams. And then I realized that there's just, once you do that for a while, you can actually pivot and pursue something new that's exciting. And so my background was just doing marketing, and then I started the agency. And 3 years ago, also, my brother is a world-class chef, started, selling bagels at the farmer's market. That kind of took off, and I helped him do a lot of business work there and growing different digital teams. And now we're at 10 team members, and we're raising money for storefront, and we're doing a lot of wholesale. And so, I've been able to do all that just because the foundation you get as an experienced marketer, it just opens all these doors for you to sort of create cool, exciting things. Don't you think?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's funny actually. So my partner and I had an agency a while back, and the agency started initially as a web development company. And we actually went in the opposite direction where we talked to these companies we built websites for. And 6 months later, they'd come back and be like, where are my leads? And we'd be like, I don't know, what are you doing for marketing? And they'd be like, nothing, I built a website. What do you mean? And so it's funny how those two worlds kind of go back and forth there.
I think the moral is that you need both. And if you really want to succeed and win, you need to have people at the table who can comprehend both. And you're not trusting developers to give you marketing advice, and you're not asking marketers to make critical technical decisions for your website,
100%. Yeah, they can't exist in these two completely unrelated worlds. Like, they naturally come together. Now, so that's actually a good pivot point. So one of the main reasons I really wanted to talk to you today and have you here on the podcast is because there are a few types of projects that I see in organizations that go more poorly than web builds. There are a million issues that seem to pop up. That's why you exist, to guide companies through that process. And I would even argue in the tech space, it's sometimes even worse, because tech people, they know websites, right? They know what it should look like. They're heavily opinionated in what it should be. And so in that, as you're starting to work with companies, or you start the process with each client, what are some of the biggest hangups that people have when they try developing sites for themselves?
Sure. I'll go through, if you work in the marketing department of a company, I'll go through some of the biggest things we've seen in our agency. But the biggest two, for sure, in my opinion, are design systems and project management. If you get one of those two things wrong, it's going to be an unprofessional output for the project. So
define design systems for me real quick.
Design systems. That means you're building a modular, intentional universe, design universe in Figma, and then it's being built in Webflow or wherever, any place you build a site. What that's letting you do is it's Without doing that, your code's going to be more bloated, things are going to break more easily, and your site's probably not going to be consistent. So at my agency, we care a lot about building really powerful, consistent, professional sites. And nothing breaks my heart more than, on a page for one section to have all this negative space up here and the next section to be small, like kind of breaks my heart. Or just to see some pages with massive headings and some with tiny headings. And, without a proper design system, this stuff's just going to happen. And, you build a site, everyone's excited. A year later, almost the majority of our clients who've come to us on Webflow, their sites are a mess. Things break easily. And it's really because, just in general, there's like a lack of true professionals in the space who've spent the time really understanding how design systems work, because they go beyond development, they go into design. And you really have to have the experience and really made those mistakes and have people who've made those mistakes who can tie the design and development together so that once the site launches, your design team can more quickly stand up pages in modular ways, and your development team knows how to build them without doing everything, every section, every element from scratch each time. It's really just, it's the common stuff for very custom coded sites and those workflows. It's just really bringing that into, the new space of more democratized access to building websites through Webflow.
That's good. I like that phrase, design systems. A lot of websites I'll see, even somewhat newer websites, they'll have like the same section that looks, it's 5 different versions of the same section across a website, and there's no modularization across from it.
Yeah, it's honestly, it's more common than you would expect that this is missed. And, tools, when building web tools, you can build these Lego blocks and these pieces. And as far as if you're a small marketing team trying to have the impact of a larger marketing team, you can only do that with your website if it's built this way. It is impossible for you all to be efficient, build and ship quickly. And doing it in a way where it's not, you sometimes can build and ship quickly, but it causes a lot of mental strain and pressure and anxiety in our space, without being intentionally building, being intentionally onboarded and trained in how to use design systems across Figma and your web platform, it's going to be trouble. And that's why I'm really passionate about it. And I think if you're looking to build a site, really making sure you have that on solid footing and you have a plan around your design system is the first place to definitely start.
That's great. One of the other things a lot of companies or organizations or marketers will run into is that their web projects can come crashing down when they don't have the right stakeholders involved from the start. I remember we were building a site years ago for a tech company, and right before launch, he was like, all right, this looks good to me. I love it. We're probably good for tomorrow. I'm going to bring this and show this to my neighbor tomorrow. I think he has good design taste. And we're like, oh boy, this is not going anywhere good. And it essentially delayed the project for like 6 weeks, and it was a mess. So I guess with that in mind, stakeholders being an issue, and this is the same thing for internal departments too, like not getting the right people to sign offs. But anyway, what would your recommendations be around like who to get involved in these projects when you're in the early stages of this, and what level of involvement different players should have and all that?
Yep. So I first shared with you about the importance of design systems and just having professional resources. So I'm going to dig a little bit into that, but I also want to say bringing the right people together, flagging these things is project management. I think the two most important things is design systems and project management. The project manager or project lead or strategist, whatever you want to call, we'll loop it all together. It's their job to make sure at the start of the project, these goals, rubrics are defined. So I would say as far as who to have involved, number one, creative person, leader, owner, who can take responsibility for setting up a proper design system in Figma. I would say a technical person who's able to implement and understand how you can execute design systems in Webflow. And I think the third person, as far as like critical team, the third person is just marketing person who just can look, we've had people where there's 5 different marketing people involved in the site. Someone owns copy, someone owns images and illustrations, someone owns branding. Like you can break it up, but fundamentally there needs to be at least one person who's responsible there. And then I would say, Jacob, there's not like any right or wrong way of how to resource and bring together people, but it needs to be written down and defined around who's owning what across all the different things that make a website work. It's way more complex. I'm shocked. I had no idea what I was getting myself into in this business. I'm like, building websites, it's easy. Are you kidding me? And I'm like, wow, this actually is like a huge project. It's kind of like building a house, which I'm like, there's no way building a house is like a whole different thing. But there are some times where it's just like, wow, you really, if you don't think things through and plan and have the right people, things can come falling down later. And so, as far as having, I spoke about some individual roles, but ultimately it's, do you have high integrity people who are organized? If you're like looking to hire someone to work with on your web project, external to your organization, I would ask yourself, like, is this a high integrity person? And are they organized? Because there are people that are high integrity, but their life is a mess and they're going to miss details because they're scattered. And there are people that are very organized and this and that, but if something falls through, they're not going to speak up. And so I think if you have those things in external partners, they know what they're doing, these big hangups you're saying and disasters are not going to happen.
Definitely. So when you're pulling these people, they all come from different backgrounds, right? You said like a project manager, the designer, multiple design people, you have the marketing people, they all have different priorities, they have different opinions. How do you, as you're running these web projects, how do you handle those differing opinions or visions for what the web project should look like among all the stakeholders involved?
Yeah, there's no perfect answer to this question. It's unfortunately always a struggle and a challenge. I would say the first thing is, if you have an internal and external like project manager that has a lot of empathy and people skills, that's going to do a lot, a lot of help to kind of balance, and they can use that judgment. And then again, like I said, if you're organized, then you're set up safer. Going deeper into your question, how to balance all the different priorities and needs. What we're doing now is when we have a new project, we interview CTO or head of engineering, leadership team, marketing person who's going to be owning and like maintaining and responsible for the site, at least those three groups. And we ask, okay, like if you give a rubric 6 months from now from the site going live, like what do you expect and want to see for this to be a successful project? We get that. And this is something new we're trying. We haven't, before is always global goals. We weren't actually going to specific stakeholders, but where our theory is by doing it globally, but also for each individual person, defining it and writing it, that when we deliver the site, we come back to those initial individual stakeholder goals. And we're telling them, hey, like you had these 5 things. We did 4 of them. 1 of them we skipped. Here for this person, we got all 5 of yours. And for this person, it's like, look, to get all 5 of yours, we had to increase the budget by $50K. You did not want to spend that. So we're intentionally only giving you 3 because of budgetary reasons. And so, more work, it means more money. And so it's really difficult scoping these projects. And I think a big thing, Jacob, you're asking about how we balance these decisions and people's preferences. In the end, it comes back always to budget and timeline. So if there's clearly defined goals of the project and expectations, that's going to drive the budget, that's going to drive the timeline. And if everyone's aligned around those things, you're going to be safer, way safer than if you're just kind of going in, just like, hey, let's design some pages and build them out. There's even then risk for error.
Yeah, 100%. So that's a really good idea. I'm interested to see how that follows through, because a lot of organizations and the people we're talking to, as they're considering, building a new website or whatever that might be, they'll talk to the stakeholders. But is this something you record in a document and send around? Because it's something you'd want to reference back later, you mentioned.
Yeah, the idea is just to build a central, and keeping it simple. We're not trying to overcomplicate it. It's just having each stakeholder define the 5 things that because for like right now we have a company, it's an enterprise Webflow build. Lily was meeting with their head of engineering this morning, and he's like, yeah, we want a Webflow because it's low code and we didn't have to have all these external dependencies. On the project, we ended up deploying all the code through GitHub through like a more formal technical process. He's like, yeah, we'll kind of have to see how we feel about this. He's like, the idea of Webflow is that we weren't going to be doing these things, but the reality is there's a lot of really custom things that were structured there, and that was the recommendation we made. And so I think in hindsight on that project, that's where this all is coming from. Like, we could have done a better job putting in writing and really documenting, hey, we verbally discussed this, but this was the decision that was made. And they're owning the decision, and we're letting our clients and those companies own those decisions, know their options, rather than us sort of making those decisions all the time, those critical decisions for them on those key areas without kind of giving them that transparency and visibility. But we also have clients where we have a clear paper trail that we made a decision. Like another client, another enterprise build, we did all the code in Webflow, and that was all documented. And at the end, they're like, why is this not in GitHub? Like, why is this in Webflow and this and that? And I'm like, I hear you, but here's the transcript, and this is what we agreed to, and I'm so sorry. And so I think we say all these strategy and tactics, but in the end, people are people. Everyone's busy. It's expensive to live in America. Therefore, people are balancing multiple priorities, and things are going to fall through. People are going to forget stuff.
Yeah, certainly. But it does make that conversation easier down the road when you have something to point back to. And it also probably gives you the opportunity to have those tough conversations earlier instead of, weeks or months down the road.
Hire us. Like, that's why people hire us, because we're telling them. I mean, it's easy for you and me to get on a sales call, wow, someone say this stuff, and then it's difficult to deliver. So I think definitely good salespeople can sell strategy, partnership, results. This is helping you own your marketing layer with Webflow, but it's a whole other thing actually bringing that to life. And if you don't have the people in an agency and an organization who really are aligned with that mission and understand, like, Hal's here making these promises on sales calls, we gotta deliver, like, this is what we're doing, without having that internal alignment within your company around, like, what you stand for and what your process is. Like, it's just like, and if you hire an agency that operates in that way, where they're too frazzled, you're going to get disappointed, and you're going to question, was this the right choice hiring this partner for this project?
Certainly. You've started talking about several times already the spec stage. You talked about design systems. You talked about kind of getting the information from the stakeholders, collecting all that information. And I'm of the belief, I'm a very systematic thinker, that one of the most critical elements to any project, but a web project going smoothly, is a rock solid process to walk everybody through, just to give them the confidence that we're going to do this, that we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to document this. So with that being said, walk me through, even at a high level first, walk me through your approach to developing these websites. Like, what does that experience look like for your customers and the teams you lead?
Well, the fundamental process starts with, usually we do 2 rounds of revisions. And I think just starting there as far as what to do, defining the amounts of, and I have some friends with agencies where they have unlimited revisions. Now, I think that's not necessarily a wise business practice, and it can drag on timelines, and it can cause lack of structure just having that in there. But I think by putting 2 rounds of revisions during the design and development phase of or any deliverable, it helps build a timeline, and it builds an expectation where we can respect budgets and timelines. Without defining that, it puts your provider in a place where they might have to be spending way more time. This, if you're hiring an outside partner, more often than not, the more work is more money to them, and they're incentivized to do as little work as possible for the great output. Ideally, you're not working with people that are just blinded by that. But you also have to realize and be empathetic that if you keep asking for more without paying more and breaking scope, you're going to demotivate your partner. And so we put in 2 rounds of revisions and say, hey, if you want to do more work after that, you can pay us hourly for that. And I tell people, sometimes part of the creative process, it just needs more time. It's not like we did anything wrong or you did anything wrong, assuming we resourced the project right and, we have the right system in place. Sometimes we want to do that. We're doing a rebrand right now in the company, and we're doing some logos. And this morning I'm like, hey, I want us to spend more time. I want to do more concepts. You know what I mean? It's and I need to pay more money for that, and that's fine. So I think big point number one I'm trying to say is define the number of rounds of revisions during design and development, and that will lead to more accurate budgets and timelines.
That's great. So so walking through the different stages of the development process. So first of all, you talked about maybe we'll call it specification stage. You might call it something else. And this is where you think through design systems, you get the input from your organization, you have those budget conversations, you have those objective conversations.
There's actually 2 different steps, Jacob.
Perfect. Good.
There's first, the sales strategy goal, big picture part. That's number 1, discovery. Okay. Big level discovery. Then there's the technical scoping, which comes after. Sometimes you can bleed them together. We like separating them. That's when you start going into the weeds. For instance, we did an enterprise build earlier this year, and we spent 160 hours just scoping out all the APIs, all the integrations and everything. That is not something we would do during this first level big picture discovery. So we have the big level discovery, understanding stakeholders, the goals, what they need. Once that's aligned, now we start going into the technical discovery. That might be technical discovery, usually for development, sometimes for design, but usually the branding process in itself kind of gives that more advanced discovery. So step 1, sales discovery process. Step 2, technical architecture. And when we're doing larger projects, Jacob, that are like more technical for larger companies or fast growing companies, like there's always the option after that technical discovery, Webflow is not the right option for them. They need something fully custom coded. And that's when the engagement would end. That's never happened before, but it's built in a way that they're not obliging themselves to spend 6 figures on a project when in fact it's not the right solution. And they need to bear that risk. You know what I mean? And that's just the space of web development. And if you're leading a marketing department, I really hope you can hire people who've had experience and understand that you have to sometimes invest $10,000, $20,000, $30,000. These are for bigger projects. This is not for like a standard site, but if you're doing a big project and working for like, you know, a well-growing company, like you might have to spend some money doing the discovery strategy work, but then also the technical scoping, testing all the APIs and making sure that you're not going to hit a roadblock, because nothing is worse getting into a project 2 weeks before launch and realizing a key spec or a key integration can't be done. We gotta make sure that earlier in the process that we discover those things. And ideally it's done in a way that you can use that knowledge you paid for and still use that instead of just having it as a sunk cost. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it certainly does. So you have the discovery phase where you're talking at a high level. And is that where you have those discussions with like leadership, marketing teams, designers, stuff like that? All right, perfect. So you collect
Sometimes we charge for that. Sometimes it's like, we want to win this project. We just want to build good relationships, and we'll comp some of that.
Of course. And so, but you have that information collection stage, at which point you're determining at a high level what direction we're going to come in. Is what CMS makes sense? Is it Webflow? Is it something else? What is your set of marketing tools we need to pull into this integration? And again, just a high level sort of where are you at? What are you looking for? How can we help sort of conversation?
And
second step.
Yeah, it's a second step. What's the second step?
Technical architecture. Did I get that right? The terminology?
Technical architecture. Yep.
Perfect. And then in that is the like deep specification that would include API connections, system integrations, really at a high level, the tech spec. And is this something that you often feel like a pressure of maybe organizations at least typically rush through when this is actually one of the most important elements of this process?
Yes and no. There's always friction. There's always friction that always someone wants the site. Everyone wants the site done as quick as possible. Like by definition, a lot of like website, my industry, my space, people like don't care about a website until they care about it. So like, you know, until they see a need and that they're losing money and opportunity through it. So once they identify that, they want to move quick. I would say there's always people who want to go as fast as possible, and there's always people who are saying, no, this is not professional, we're going to have problems. And, you know, for one project we did with some integrations, they didn't clean up their database, their external database, before we linked it in. And they made that choice. That was not my choice. Definitely, we did not advise that, but they wanted to go live in 3 months because the board said we had to do that. And now it's a lot more difficult for them to maintain it. And it sucks. And like, it kind of breaks my heart, but you know, that's kind of out of my control, and I need to let my emotionalism let go, because, you know, we can make recommendations. So to answer your question, Jacob, a lot of companies do have people who want to rush it, and there's people inside the company who also are the voice of reason saying we can't.
Is this the stage where you're also doing like a sitemap, wireframe type work, or is that later on in the process? Is that the next stage?
It depends on the size of the build. If this is like a 30+ project, we're not going to handle that too heavily. We're going to handle that big picture during the discovery phase. But then during this technical architecture phase, we are starting to think about sitemap, pages, CMS for static pages. And a lot of this work, Jacob, we do hourly instead of doing it for a fixed price, because sometimes like you discover things you didn't know. And it just means more work, and it's really difficult for like an open-ended thing to just kind of say, hey, you know, it's going to take this amount of time. So I think having flexibility there, when we can do fixed price, fixed scope things, when it's predictable, we do that. But I think this technical architecture phase is very unpredictable. And we need you need it to be ready that it's going to be unpredictable. And, you know, if we can even add in, Jacob, an SEO research phase into the technical stage, a majority of companies don't have SEO knowledge or resources to understand that investing in that earlier on can impact sitemaps, site direction, copy. Most companies we work with do not consider SEO when they write copy. 90% have not. We do not have internal members who do SEO work, and like we do technical SEO, but as far as keyword research, opportunity assist, we always work with external partners because that's a whole niche and an area that's constantly in flux in some ways. And so I will say, if you have a big project and like have budget, bring that in. The SEO research too is important because that can impact pages you build, pages you cut. You know, a site we migrated, they cut half their blog because the SEO research showed that half the pages were just doing harm and not help. And so these are things where if you don't do it in the beginning of the project, you're going to have to do it later. It's going to end up costing more time and money, right?
When you're working with those partners and you're pulling these SEO experts in, building the site, number one, incredibly wise to pull that in at this stage earlier so you're not like kicking yourself later on and wishing you did a different kind of setup. How do you, like, what do the discussions look like when you're balancing like the technical SEO side specifically with like user experience as far as like how to structure the site, what that looks like, what content you're writing for what reason? What do those conversations look like?
I'll tell you, every company is different, has different influences. I will go shout out to Growth Mentor, hashtag Matthew K. He's a great SEO guy there. We work with him sometimes. And I will say that as far as prioritizing these things, we have a client. They're a startup. They have some good funding. They're in the e-commerce space. And their SEO strategy should be like Shopify category, you know, general, because that's where the search intent is. That's where people are searching. But the owners of that company are like, that's too generic. That's not branded. If our investors saw that like we are just this, they'd be like, why did we invest in this? And it's so interesting because investors also care about growth and results. And so there's an interesting balance between branding and messaging and like practical SEO results. And so I think some company, that's what I'm saying. Apparently they think they're funders and their investors care a lot. So their hands are going to be more tied there. And there's also, I guess, ego involved. There's also, you know, it's all I'm saying, Jacob, is there's a trade-off between like branding and creativity and control and going with a more formal keyword approach. And I would say going with the keyword approach is probably the better move if you want to generate more traffic and get people showing up to your site. But, you know, who knows with the changes with AI and all the stuff with Google, like maybe that'll become less relevant more and more over time.
Yeah. And this actually also makes me want to like point back to what you were talking about earlier about getting the true objectives of each of the stakeholders involved. Because if they say, well, like, I don't like these keywords, but previously their whole thing was I need to generate traffic and leads, then it's like, well, is this true? Like, do you actually care about the keyword or do you care about getting the results? Because this keyword will get the results.
That's it. So, Jacob, we're talking about budgets and planning. That's what I'm saying, dude. It's like my brother's getting married. You know what I mean? He's planning a wedding. It's like my bro, he could spend $50K. He could spend $10K if he wanted to. He could also spend $1 million on a wedding. You know what I mean? Like, it's about having these conversations drives you to those considerations. And this is why having an agency and a partner that has experience and a breadth, because we're talking about SEO research. If you're adding that, budget's going to go up. Timelines are going to be elongated off the bat. That's going to upset some people, you know?
Yep.
And then we're talking about bringing in the right people. We're having the brand now we have to say, okay, who's handling the copywriting? Is it the SEO person? Is it the brand? What's that process? We need to define these things. And Jacob, honestly, a lot of clients have this stuff already worked out and they have their politics and we don't have as much space to contribute there.
Yeah.
But we're talking about really having a world-class service. When we have the head of brand say, I care about these 5 things. We have the SEO person say, I care about these 5 things. And then we have the marketing person care about these things. Let's just say, hey, look, we need to bring in this SEO consultant to do this kind of scope. They need to work with your copy person here. And then there's going to be and for the marketing person, we need to actually scope out 5 extra pages that are purely built for Google keywords that we're going to put in the footer to generate traffic, but these are not meant for your core website experience. These are pure SEO pages. And again, more work, more time, more money, more timeline. So, you know, by doing that initial work where we're getting stakeholders, having their bullet points, it lets us tell them, you're not going to get everything you want. You're not going to get everything you want, but here's how we recommend we get the best benefit for everyone, right?
Yep. Yeah, and that balance is really hard. There's this tension between, maybe these aren't the right terms for it, but there's aesthetics and functionality and performance and things like that, all meshing together, and they can't all get what they want. And so there's this negotiation that happens throughout, in this case, a web development process, in which you need someone, I think to your point, to sit in the middle and to make those negotiations and to communicate them well. And that actually goes back to your first point earlier when you said it's the biggest issues come down to design systems and PM. In my mind, that would fall in that PM category. Is that where you're going with that?
100% for sure. And it's hard. It's impossible to scope. Like, it's really, billing hourly is great. We've done it before. We've made a lot of, like, our most profitable work has been through billing hourly because it protects us if they want to add more scope. But also clients and companies, if I was leading a marketing department, I don't want to pay, I want to know what the cost is going to be to build something. I want to have that at the start and hold to it. The issue is with some of this work, it's just difficult to put a fixed price if you want to have that creativity and interaction. Like, for instance, for a project we're shipping next week, we have this page with different CMS items where you can click to play a video, and it slides out and starts playing the video. And then when you click away, it pauses, and it's all dynamic, that it works by the CMS. That took maybe 6 hours of development to do that. You could have just put like a little video embed. And so it's like, how do you have those conversations in scope projects where, like, do you want that extra 6 hours of work? Like, you know what I mean? And it's impossible to do everything at the start fully. And so, we're talking about process, even before hiring Jacob and doing that discovery phase, you want to have people there, again, with the project management, where they have the empathy in the organization that you trust, that they're going to help you get the best value for your work. And they're not going to put you in a place where they're just going to say no. They will sometimes say no because of scope and this and that, but you're just trying to find people that you think there's going to be a nice give and take, and you're going to get good value for what you spend, right?
Yeah, for sure. So let's say we're building a website, we got the discovery phase done, all good, we get the vision for it, we shifted to the technical architecture side, locked that in, had conversations with everyone, got all the documentation in, we're locked in and ready to build. Let's say Webflow is the right direction to go in this case. What's next?
Brand. And brand and copy can actually work concurrently. So we need to get wireframe. So these are two work streams that can happen at the same time. We're talking about Reloom before. Reloom library, I could talk about it for a while. Essentially, it's a framework that has these Figma sections. And there's over 1,000 of them, and it lets us and it empowers marketing teams to build landing page wireframes. You can pick a hero section, put it in, pick a feature section, put it in, edit the copy, there you go. And then you can actually copy and paste those components into Webflow. You have to style them, and it's actually not as easy as it sounds, but it does save time and helps marketing teams. So we first need to have the copywriters, marketing people building out these wireframes with the content and getting content locked in. You can't do web design without content. It just you just need to have it. And that's the number one thing where companies get stuck, is getting that content locked in. So as soon as you can start building wireframes, getting content in those wireframes and defining that, the better, because we've never had a project where the clients deliver the content on time. And I've been doing this for a bit, and it's just maybe it's my fault. I doubt it, but
No.
we're hoping to solve that problem one day.
We actually, so number one, that's happened to us constantly. And until we start writing the content is a part of the solution you can have. But I used to, when I would hire people, I would ask them a question: when you're developing a website, what comes first, copy or design? And in my opinion, and it sounds like you're in the same place there, it's always copy first. You don't just always copy
or
first.
Concurrently, and that's when you're
that's fine.
You can have different teams. But that's what I'm saying, these two work streams. So get the pages, and that's the discovery page can also define the sitemap, the pages. Like, how can you design copy in a page if you don't know all the pages on the site? And then also, if you don't scope out all the pages, you might build pages in sections and stories, where it's actually this page needs to be broken into two. We've had many projects where in the middle of the project, actually going through this, we want to add more pages and break this up and build out a new section. That's fine, but we need to have a system and a way to account for that extra work if it's going to go against the original scope. And I think, that it's nice and convenient to say, hey, this was the scope, you can't change it. But I think we need to have systems to allow that flexibility, because it's what's best for the company, the marketing team, and the client. When a lot of these projects are migrations, going from an existing site to a new site. A migration is kind of like you're tearing down a house or you're renovating a house. And you break down a wall and there's a hornet's nest in there, and you're like, oh my God, it's going to happen. So closing up on talking about these wireframes and copy, go through that process and be ready that you might discover you need some new pages you didn't previously discover, and just make sure you and your partner have a way to account for that extra timeline and budget. And for branding, we have our whole branding process. We have like a shorter branding process, a medium, and a longer one. It's so in flux because every company is at a different stage in their brand journey. They have different internal resources. And so there's not like a one size fit all branding experience. I think we need to just consider, we do have a process, but we need to consider as far as where the company's at and what resources they have in deciding that. But we build that out.
So you're building the wireframes or getting content along with that. Are you locking in content, or are you like, this is the idea on the wireframe and you can wordsmith it later?
Content has to be locked in before we design the pages.
Perfect. So you're locking that in, getting the sign off. All right, now we're good to shift to branding. That branding process might look a little bit different. As you mentioned, you might have a company that's like, here's all of our brand guidelines, super locked in, good to go, no changes at all. There might be a company that isn't quite there yet, and so you can help with that at that point. So now you're into development, I assume?
So we've done the brand work, maybe new logo, new colors, new everything. We have our wireframes put together. We then design, we even include this really in our branding process, designing a new homepage. And then sometimes we include 1 to 2 other pages in that branding process. So, and then the reason we do that is because once we have 3 pages locked in with copy design, then efficiently it allows me and my design team to just cook and just ship pages, and it's that foundation. And so, we could also separate the web design into its own phase, but we like doing the first 2 pages as far as like the branding phase, just because it just flows better that way. So
yeah, for sure.
For branding, we apply it to the pages, 2 rounds of revisions, as we said before. And then at that stage, we're trying to move in. We've always wanted to have all the pages designed and then all the pages developed, but usually it adds an extra 2-3 weeks or what have you, and people want to save that time. So I don't know if we'll ever insist on that, just because I don't like saying no to clients. I need to do it more. But best case scenario is you design the whole site, your design system's locked in, nothing's changing, and then you develop. If the site's not too large, do that. Try to do more of that approach. But we still, Jacob, we like to develop the first page or 2, show it to the client. The head of marketing is going to be on their 13-inch Mac being like, this is too big for me.
Yep.
And then, I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to mock people, but and always, and then the person who's on their giant screen is like, well, I don't like this. And you can't avoid that fully. We can tell people, hey, this is Figma, this is what it should be. It's going to be responsive, but we need to bring out those things early from all stakeholders and C-suite so we can just address it then. I don't think we can avoid some people complaining about responsiveness and their preferences. So we really try to rush building a first page or 2 so we can have people complain about it, address their ideas, and then we can build the rest of the site without having this technical debt,
Yeah, for sure. Now, when you said you like to, you would ideally, in a perfect world, you would design all of the web pages. Now, some websites can have hundreds of pages. Are you saying dupe all those, all service pages instead of just one template for it? Or are you saying I want a page that has every one of those there's those pieces, almost all the pieces of the website should be fully designed.
Module. So there's 2 ways to do a site, and it comes back to sort of how thoughtfully the wireframing was done. So Reloom Library, what's great is you're able to build taking these components, putting them together, and the best case scenario, if you're really being a strategic builder, is you're defining these modules, these Lego pieces, designing them there, and you're building a whole system in a framework where marketing teams can take these Lego pieces and build new pages, bring them together. On each Lego piece, you can have a component in Webflow, which lets you say, on this page for this component, hide this subheading. But on this page, they turn on the subheading. And it lets marketing teams, without having to touch code or this and that, take these Lego blocks and still customize them and have some flexibility. But you have to plan and be strategic about it from the start. You can sure add stuff later, but as we're having intelligent and enlightened leadership, sorry for dropping, not enlightened leadership, that's a little much, but having really intelligent and wise people on the design and development and copy, defining these modules up front. I'll tell you, Jacob, a lot of clients just want to move quick. They don't necessarily want to pay the budget for that type of extra work and thought. It's not that much more expensive. And We build them the site, we reuse components, and they just copy and paste from this page. We'll reuse this here over there. That works fine. But, answering your question, best case scenario, we're defining like most of those Lego blocks and designing those and kind of having a library there. And then we build pages with those. And then let's say a page needs a unique section, we design it then. But that's the approach we like to lean into. What I will say is when you do that too much, the site kind of just looks the same everywhere.
Yeah.
And some companies want to have like really unique sections all over. But then the question at that point, like, is it really worth the budget? Like, our time isn't cheap. And so if you really want to go all out, we can do that. So it's a balance. Did I answer your question okay?
You certainly did. Yeah. So it's essentially you want to build all of the, as you mentioned, like the Lego pieces of the website. Later, you can build additional pages. It's just reorganizing. Maybe there's like toggles for certain sections of each of those bricks, if you will. But yeah, and then you mentioned as well, which I really appreciate, the balance between let's try to build this in a really scalable way so it can be managed really well and really easily. But there's a balance. You could have 5 sections that the whole website is built on, and great, it's fully responsive, it never breaks, but it's the most boring website that you've ever seen in your life. Or you get 300 and it gets impossible to manage. And so that's where you get into this sort of this balancing that you need.
And
this
it
balancing
goes back to the strategy phase. It goes back to scoping. It goes back to timelines and budgets. It all's connected, and like it's just the thing with Webflow space. It's like I can make a living and make money building websites on the internet. Great. Like that's so much of the industry of Webflow.
Yeah.
And it's like, unless you've worked with a lot of larger companies with marketing teams, you have like some technical knowledge and design knowledge and have that background, there's only so many people out there who have kind of trod that path to give you that experience. And look, you don't need perfection. Like there's a million ways you can screw up a website in a process. Let's not try to cover them. That's unreasonable. What I am saying is that like this isn't easy work if you want for everything to go smoothly. And things are not just going to always go smoothly. It pains me to say that because that's how I want things to go, and I push for that, and that's what I sell. But it's just there's always decisions and trade-offs. So just really having it grounded in a clear vision of how you want the site to work, it guides you in making those decisions with less stress.
For sure. So now that we're shifting now into the building phase of this, and this is where I've been wanting to talk about this a couple of minutes ago, actually, but why is Webflow your platform of choice? Why is that the one you focus on? I know you're really involved in their community as well, running events and things like that. So pitch me, or the person listening, I guess, why is Webflow the future of web development and a really good choice for that?
First thing I'll say is people have this idea, I can build on Webflow. I can just have marketers maintain everything. Like that is the marketing, that is the promise, that is the goal of Webflow, that is what I sell. But the reality is that if you want to be building net new pages with new sections and everything, I would be shocked if your marketer can go in without spending a good bit of time learning the learning curve of Webflow and building out stuff correctly and properly. Like this is not a drag and drop builder. This is a visual web development platform. And you're writing code, you're using CSS, you're building styles. Like Framer is great. If you've heard of Framer, Framer is a very growing, popular, fast tool that lets designers build websites a lot easier because it abstracts a lot more. It makes more choices for you. And so many designers are finding ways to build sites. Now, are these going to be enterprise quality, more technical sites that have a fundamental structure and code? No, that's not Framer. Maybe you don't need that. Maybe you don't want that. But Webflow is what it's giving you is it's giving someone like me, who's like a recovering perfectionist, someone with really high standards and expectations, someone who hates telling clients no. I rarely have to tell clients no because with Webflow, again, the infrastructure of Webflow lets us use these really efficient practices to write code visually, but it gives us also the opportunity to write code, and build very custom solutions, which we're really good at. So I like Webflow as a platform because it's letting me not push out these like inconsistent, clunky sites where I'm hitting roadblocks. I'm having to tell clients, you can't do that in the platform. It's not having the challenges of WordPress. And look, WordPress is a great solution and product. It can do a lot. Like WordPress can do more than Webflow because it's an open platform, but it's just a pain to work with. The apps, they add up, they can break, maintaining it. It's just like, people don't really enjoy WordPress. So people enjoy using Webflow, more or less. So I just was excited about Webflow because, I was a performance marketer. I cared about results. I cared about proving my value. I cared about earning what people are paying me for. And then 3-4 years ago, when I started seeing a change in saturation of markets, when I started seeing increased complexity in tracking and attribution, and I started seeing all this nonsense in paid marketing in those spaces, I'm like, let me pivot. Let me go to a place where I can provide a lot of value and control outcomes better. And so now that's what I get to do. I get to bring people together using Webflow to really build professional, world-class websites that, when built properly, can be maintained a lot by marketing teams. And sometimes marketing teams will hire us 40, 60, 80 hours a month, depending on what they need to maintain their site. And we have people who pay us 20 hours every 2 months for support. So, and we have clients that hire us and haven't spoken to us since. It's anything's fine there. It depends on really what you're trying to accomplish.
For sure. So the Webflow is obviously the core tool that you guys use, and it's an amazing one. I actually built my first site on Webflow for a buddy of mine like 4 years ago, and I totally caught the bug. I loved it. It was awesome. It was really good. I think I'm a big fan of the platform. But outside of that, you had mentioned, I'm thinking like total stack almost as you're building websites. You mentioned Relume, which we didn't really define for people. If you could, maybe the 30-second, what is Relume for those listening?
Relume, fun story about Relume, if I can share. I was an early user of the product, early days, and I was on with one of the founders on a discovery call, telling him, you need to build all the stuff in Figma. I will use your product more and adopt it. And they're like, yeah, we're not so sure about that. Now, like, it's gone so, like, they're literally being featured at Figma's conference. Like, and that's so the core new product, it lets you build AI sitemaps, copy, and everything. And it picks all the sections, fills in the copy. You can design it in Figma, press a button, pushes it to Webflow using the Figma to Webflow connector. In theory, all this stuff is great, and it lets you ship these custom sites so quickly and efficiently. We do not use those tools. There are certain projects where that makes sense. We are doing more custom, thoughtful work, and right now we have not seen that workflow for our clients makes sense. But there's a lot of clients where, like, it's a powerful workflow. And Jacob, like, 4 years from now, my business will not be the same. We will be using these tools it's going to be so, like, this is the direction things are going. But Relume just lets you really bring Figma design systems to Webflow easier. It gives people just sort of like a framework to build and deploy sites in Webflow much quicker.
For sure. Now, the outside of that,
that was more than 30 seconds.
No, that was great. That's what I was looking for. Also, I think I've been saying it wrong. I've been calling it Relume or something. Relume, yeah, something like that. But whatever it is.
Relume guys.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good platform if you're looking to, like, quickly stand something up to show someone what your vision is for a website. Here are the wireframes. Here are the sitemap. Here's what it could look like. Here's the vision. And from there, you can customize
exactly
it.
For wireframing. We used to not, but we just found it's more efficient. It's better for everyone. Letter Drop. There's a company, YC company. We did their site using Relume. Their founders like, Hal, I just want something really cost effective, quick, something I can maintain and stuff, copying and pasting components and stuff. And that's what we did. And it works. We had to do some custom work on top of there. But again, like, the thing is, Relume does not, it's getting more in that direction of how it works to design systems. We still feel we have to do that custom work. We take Relume components, design them into modules and components, and the whole workflow of just click, 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 yada, yada, it's in Webflow, you're done. Like, we've not been able to find that that's possible currently. And we feel there's still time needed to do that little extra professional work,
Definitely. And that's why you guys are there to help with that.
Exactly.
And so from the other side of the tech stack would be like the integrations, the data side of things. Are you like an Airtable company, Zapier? What do you often?
We have one client. They're getting 100,000, according to Ahrefs, 100,000 visitors a month through programmatic SEO campaign. We've launched over 8,000 pages on their site using Airtable, using scripting. Like, Jacob, if anyone wants to geek out on programmatic SEO, hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn. Like, I love that. It's so much fun. We do all of our migrations on Airtable.
Okay.
We populate all the content because it's so easy with images and reference fields. We have proprietary scripts that automatically compress all of the images. We have a whole 301 redirect system where we bring in Screaming Frog, GA4, and Search Console. It combines all of the data and then spits out all the combinations of folders to remap. these are like proprietary things, Jacob, that I've built over the last year in the company because I just love building these tools and systems. And maybe one day we'll sell them. It's something that we add as a perk to our clients.
Yeah.
And if you ever have any migration work, I got to show you this migration tool. It's pretty sweet. But
I could nerd out that
we
with
love
you for a while on that.
Airtable. We love WhaleSync, which kind of connects it. And yeah, I mean, there's so many different tools we use. But yeah, Webflow and Airtable are two that we definitely lean into the most.
That's awesome. You had mentioned a minute ago around like these new technologies are popping out every day. Every day you're seeing these new tools come across our desk that are just crazy, especially obviously with AI coming. From your perspective, like put your future telling hat on if you could, like what is like the future of web development look like? It seems like it's changing so fast.
I was talking to Reese. I don't know if you know Reese. He's also in Growth Mentor yesterday.
Okay.
I think one thing I realized, it's just like, dude, just GPT-4. I've really avoided using it just for everything. But honestly, like I had a client, we did a whole lot of written discovery, answering questions, all the stuff scoped out. I just put it all into GPT-4, just copy, pasting, bringing it in, say, hey, ask me all the questions you have, let me answer all of them. And I said, hey, spit me out a sitemap, spit me out content section for these pages. You know, with Reloom right now, you're not getting that level of like, you're saying, make me a site for a therapist, you know, with the services. And then it will like do its thing. And it's actually pretty cool and impressive what it does. I think like step one, as far as like high value strategic work, it's giving frameworks and systems, which aren't these are frameworks. These aren't like software tools. This is what Reese is working on right now, is frameworks that you can ask the right questions, document them in writing, feed them into GPT-4, be able to answer questions, and then perhaps to certain train large LLMs, you can then spit out like a really strong starting point where you're not doing a disservice to the client. Where it's like the reality is that like, starting with this is better than us trying to do it. You know, we're seeing studies come out of Deloitte last week showing that their management consultants leveraging AI like consistently are outperforming their counterparts. And look, there's exceptions in this. I mean, there's always considerations there, but I think step number one is just strategically, how can we use these tools to build the right strategy? And then, yeah, before we know it, for design and development work, we're all going to be replaced. And it's just going to be how we work with these machines and systems and know to catch things that are off and kind of piece. We're going to be using our wisdom to piece these tools together. And I'm a little concerned about it, but also like, I feel a little bit better being a business owner.
Yep.
Being able to solve it than having to work for a business and feeling squeezed. So I'm building my agency on a rebrand really around these values of service, honesty, kindness, quality. And I feel that branding myself and my company and building that spiritual foundation, I feel even when technology shifts and who knows what's going to happen, I feel we're going to be protected and safe because in the end, you want to work with someone who gives a damn, who knows what they're doing, who's going to have their heart broken if they're letting you down, you know? And who also can tell you, hey, you're crazy. We can't do that. Like, that's not realistic. So I think my advice and to myself is just keep leaning into that because we don't know what's going to happen with these technologies. But if we lead with service and quality, we'll find a way to pay our Los Angeles rent.
Well, that's perfect. I could talk to you all day about this stuff, and that whole programmatic SEO stuff on Airtable is maybe a conversation for another day, but I think this is an awesome space to wrap things up as we're coming up on our time here. Where should people go to learn more about you and what you're doing if they're looking for help?
I'm trying to, even though like my work revolves around social media for marketing, everything, I'm trying to get more off social for the rest of the year, try to tap more into like, you know, joy and happiness and all that stuff. So email me, hal@candidleap.com. If you have any questions or want to chat, you can always reach me there. If you rate me, you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'll be active again next year, but I'm kind of slowing down a little bit there for the rest of the year. And yeah, and if you're in Chicago, zeitlinsdeli.com. Come get some bagels. I don't know if we spoke much about that, but we'd love to feed you there.
Perfect. All right. Well, Hal, thanks again. I really appreciate you taking the time with me today, and it was great having you on Creative Operations.
You're the best.
Peace. All right. We'll talk soon, man. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Creative Operations, the podcast for B2B marketers who want to create amazing work that also has a business impact. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow Creative Operations wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, or access all episodes at marketersindemand.com/creativeoperations. See you next time.